welcome back to the Tween Sessions podcast. I'm Eboni Harris.
And I'm Eliza Bokeen, and we are two brown chicks changing the face of therapy on both sides of the couch.
Welcome. As you see, we have another lovely guest today.
Yes.
Writer, teacher, mental health advocate,
woman extraordinaire. Oh man,
Josie Pickens.
The Josie Pickens, aka Joe Nubian. Hi everybody.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yay. My pleasure.
So, can you tell our audience a little bit about who you are and you know what brought you here?
Oh, so who am I? I'm a professor. I actually teach writing.
Professor, not teacher, excuse me.
And same thing. I teach writing over at TSU.
Yes.
I'm also a TSU alum, so shout out homecoming.
That's awesome.
And I also am a writer. I write about, and also a cultural critic, some people call me. So essentially, I look at what's going on in the culture, in society, and kind of write a lot of times opinion editorials about those things. And usually it's the intersection of like race and gender. So I write a lot about, you know, the Black experience, also the womanist experience, and kind of the intersections of class and all of these things. A lot of my writing, and for quite some time I had a love and relationships column with Eboni magazine. So I wrote a lot about all different kinds of ways that we love, right? So self-love and familial relationships, and of course romantic partnerships, because that's all people would talk about when they talk about love.
Important for people.
And it kind of led me to creating this radio show podcast called The Love No Limit Show, which was the name of my articles and columns over at Eboni. And so the focus is really to have expansive conversations about love. And part of those love conversations have always kind of centered around self-love, self-care, and of course, our mental health journeys are a part of that. I am someone who has lived with depression, anxiety. I probably first started kind of having bouts with depression when I was a teen, and have kind of continued to deal with those issues throughout adulthood. And so I've done a good bit of writing around that, and a lot of kind of public speaking and public talks around those topics as well.
Right. And you've been very vocal about your experience with depression.
Yeah.
And it seems like it wasn't on purpose. In one of your articles, you said you did not set out to become a mental health advocate.
Yeah.
But you are.
I'm really not taking on that role. It absolutely was not my plan. Of course, you know, in Black and brown communities, there is that stigma. And I've struggled through that the way that everyone has, just admitting, hey, this is, I can remember very briefly, I was kind of getting to know someone, right? And one of the things about being like a public person, public figure, or whatever, is that people find all kinds of stuff about you. So someone found an article that I wrote about depression, suicidal ideation, and wanted to know, like, oh, okay, so, you know, you deal with depression, what's up with that? And I found it so difficult to even admit, like at this stage, after I've been writing about it for years, after I've been talking about it on panels and having public conversations about it, I still found it very difficult to have a one-on-one conversation with someone that I was getting to know about, you know, the ways that I've struggled with mental health issues, which I say all of that to say is really never easy to come out and have those conversations. But I remember when I first started writing publicly about just a number of things that I was kind of questioning and tussling with, mental health being one of those things. There were not a lot of conversations being had by Black and brown women about that. So when I started having these public conversations, so many women were like, oh my God, me too. Thank you. I see myself so much in this. And that really kind of pushed me to continue to have those conversations.
Right.
So it was, I'm still very uncomfortable talking about these things, but I feel that it is necessary, and I'm a storyteller, and I believe that sharing our stories and telling our stories brings us together, and offers support. And so I've just been pushing through my own little challenges and difficulties with it to keep going.
Well, it's a vulnerability, right? And like most of us, our vulnerabilities make us uncomfortable. We feel on some level exposed, right? And then I think having these conversations is still something that's newer that we're doing, and we're getting more and more comfortable, but in the process we're still sometimes going to be a little uncomfortable.
Because we want to feel like we have it all together.
Right.
And then, so one article that I wrote talked about the Superwoman schema, and this idea of like the strong Black woman. And this is something that translates to all women of color, I think. Right? This like you have to be strong. You
endure.
Saying that you are depressed, or you have these feelings of hopelessness, or that you are unhappy, that's weak. Right? You can't be weak. You just have to suck it up, swallow it, and keep going.
Right. Because that's what our grandmothers did.
That's what our great-grandmothers did. And our mothers, and all of the women around us.
Right. You never heard the complaints. And it's even harder sometimes when other people put that on you. That,
you
have it so much together.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't know me. I'm
a
complete mess.
And I found that was one of the reasons also that I came forward with my story, because people have this idea that, you were living this kind of middle class life, you're educated, you're doing all of these amazing things, you're, publishing in these, national publications, and, I like your style and all this. So it's like, you have it. It's good. And so I think it's important for, especially in this age of social media and Instagram, when we are painting very untrue, inauthentic pictures of ourselves, to be honest and say, there are days when I struggle to get out of bed and shower. And that's important. That's as important to note as those great days that I'm showing on Instagram.
Yeah.
Awesome. So true.
So how has being a mental health advocate helped you in your healing?
And exactly that. And first of all, it has kind of forced me to push into my vulnerability. Because there is so much power and strength in vulnerability.
Absolutely.
Right? Being able to name those things that you don't want to name, and it takes the power away from other people.
This is
right? So being able to say, hey, I struggle with these things. This is very difficult for me. Creating those connections, building relationships from that. I can't tell you how many women that I have connected with, and they would say help, but I just feel like we have helped each other.
Absolutely.
I've connected through these stories. And so that has really helped me heal in understanding that I'm not alone. And then helping other women particularly, and Black and brown women particularly, understand that they are not alone as well. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
At what point did you feel like you needed to get help with what you were struggling with the depression, suicidal ideations? Was it a breaking point, or was it just like, let me just...
It was absolutely a break. There were a couple, as it always is.
Right.
I can remember being very young, being a teen, because I think that's when I first started feeling like, hey, I'm unhappy, and of course I came from a Black family with a Black mom who was, and I grew up in the 70s. And my parents were, small town folk, and so there weren't conversations or resources or any of that available to kind of figure out, why am I sad? I didn't really have anybody to talk to about that. I just remember being very deep feeling, and just, often overwhelmed by my feelings. So I was an emotional child. So that I didn't really start getting treatment or seeing a therapist until I was much older, probably when I had my own insurance. When I was in my 20s, and I remember the first time that I saw a therapist, it was after a breakup, a really terrible breakup. Often that's a breaking point I find with women.
Right.
Like, because your whole life is turned upside down, and all of these things that you thought about your life that were going to happen are now shifting and changing, and you kind of don't know what to do.
Right.
In addition to feeling just sad and mourning the end of the relationship. And I had a good friend of mine named Harold, who was he was in psychology and sociology, like in that field. And I want to say he worked for mental health, like the state mental health department.
Okay.
And he, we talked, and I think I just kind of broke down and was crying hysterically. And he was like, "Hold on, I'm going to get you some information." And he got me number to my first therapist.
Okay.
Go Harold.
Yeah, Harold might be watching. I have to send him a note.
Yeah.
We're connected on Facebook, but man, he might have saved my life.
Wow. So he really saw within you, this was more than you just being upset.
Exactly. Yeah.
What do you think he was seeing that alarmed? I don't know if alarmed, but that, he felt like, okay, you need additional support.
I think it was because I was so hysterical.
Okay.
And the reason that I was probably so hysterical in that moment is because I had been holding in and holding back for so long. And it was just a moment where I couldn't mask it.
Yeah.
And he was not accustomed to seeing that. I was the fun, happy girl. It was a good time.
Right.
And, when it was a side of me that I think he was not accustomed to seeing or hearing. And so he was like, "We need to get you into somebody." And I might have mentioned at that point, like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful to him for that. And I kind of continued to see the therapist on and on, because you know how it is. You're in therapy, you're feeling better.
Right.
You two know how it is more than anybody. You're looking at your client log, like, where is this person? Right? Get to feeling better. You're like, I'm healed. I'm cured after 2 visits, right?
We're that good.
Oh man, because it's a process of like, you feel like you're in triage. Right. So it's like, I was able to stop the bleeding.
Right.
I'm good. You're not thinking about the wound and the healing of the wound and like, and so yes, I was using therapy as triage. And then I think when I started really taking it seriously, it was after I got married and had my daughter. Shifted my life in so many ways. It was a very difficult pregnancy. My daughter was a preemie. And I actually talked about this. There's a new exhibition of Project Row Houses with an amazing artist, Tatiana. I want to say, I hope I'm saying your name right, Tatiana. But one of the houses in Project Row Houses speaks with women of color about their experiences with race and gender and sexuality and all of these things. And I talked about this with her as a part of that exhibition, so you guys should go check it out.
Yeah.
But I just remember just being so sad. Like, my pregnancy was very difficult, and nobody talks about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, everybody's like, oh, it's just a happy, healthy pregnancy, and you just go through it without a problem. You have a healthy baby, and you take your baby home from the hospital.
And you love them,
and
perfect. And
none of that happened.
Right.
From the beginning, one thing about pregnancy is it pushes out of your body, like, everything. These are abnormalities. So immediately when I went in and found out I was pregnant, my doctor was like, "Oh, you're high risk. You have a clotting disorder. You have like all of these different things going on." And I ended up having pregnancy-induced hypertension and delivering my daughter 4 months early.
Oh wow!
She weighed
it's a miracle.
She weighed a pound and an ounce when she was born.
Right.
And she was in the hospital for 4 months. And in the process of this, I was working full time. And even right before she was born, I like hosted Thanksgiving at my house because that's what you do, right? And I just remember when I brought her home, she had to have all of this special care because she was preemie, and I was still trying to figure out how to be a wife. And my ex-husband, who we have a great co-parenting relationship now, didn't really know how to support me. I was very sad about how my life changed, which was another layer
of depression.
And like, not wanting to talk about that, right? Because you don't want to talk about being a mother and a wife and being like, I really don't like this stuff.
So you had postpartum.
Watch my language. I don't like this shit. Like, I don't like this. I miss my life. You know, and I found myself being very kind of envious of my husband and how little his life was expected to change. And how much my life had to change. Right? And I was still trying to be like this perfect mom and this perfect wife, and I think I was starting grad school and working full time and like doing all of these things, and I felt like a slave. And I remember going and when I made my appointment for my therapist, like I had my notes. Like, this is how I am feeling.
And you get to use this approach to treat me.
And I don't feel that I need my prescription. However, I do feel that we need to come together at least, twice a week. Maybe we can bring it down to, bi-monthly. So, and I sat in the chair.
A whole treatment plan.
Like that I've done all by myself, right? Because I've been researching, and then, we got it together. I don't have time for this.
Right.
I'm busy.
Yes.
Let's get in here and get this done.
Yes.
I remember sitting on my therapist's couch and just snot, crying, breaking down. When she was just like, so tell me, why are you here? And I just completely fell out.
So were you diagnosed with postpartum?
I'm trying to think of, I don't know that I was. I think because of the conversations that we had, it was just kind of a continuation of depressive symptoms, disorder. And some of the anxiety I figured out came kind of later, which was a kind of response to me being the gifted talented student who always had it together, who was always doing well, and I created all of this anxiety around me and around that. But I remember telling her that I felt so ashamed for coming in and complaining, like, here I am, I'm living this very good life, middle class life. My parents were blue collar. They came from a farming background. Like my grandparents were farmers. My grandmother had 11 children. And I was like, and here I am complaining about what and struggling with what. Like, what is wrong with me? And the best advice my therapist could have given me, and when I tell this story, the takeaway is, she says, well, how do you know your grandmother wasn't also depressed? Right. And it was just like such an aha moment. So how do I know my grandmother was? How do I know my mother didn't struggle with depression? And when she was frustrated or angry, really, because I've done some writing around that too. This idea of the mad black woman and how really kind of at the root of that a lot of times is depression and anxiety.
And exhaustion.
And the fact that I am sad, I am overwhelmed, and nobody cares.
And then
no one seems to care. And there's no one that I could talk to about this, and no one is going to do anything about it, so I'm angry.
And you have a right to be.
And you have a right to be.
Right.
Audre Lorde says anger is fueled by information. So I always tell women when they talk about being angry. So.
Sometimes you have time for TV. Information will make you angry every day.
That's we are living in a whole different level of anger at this point.
How do you think things would have been different if you had that support much earlier, say in your teenage years when you first started to feel those symptoms of depression?
And it's something that is very interesting. I've had to think about this because my daughter has some focus and impulsivity issues that, of course, her teachers kind of saw early on, and which I ignored a little bit at the beginning because, in doing my research, I understand, Black and brown children over medicated and we over diagnosed and she's a baby,
Right.
But then when I noticed that some of these things kind of were not going away, the first thing I thought was, let me find her a Black or brown psychologist. Let me get her in to see what is going on for proper diagnosis. Let's talk about medication if we can't do this holistically. And so I think about seeing her and, the work that we're doing to kind of manage these things for her. And I could see my life being much different if my parents would have known. I can't even say if I would have had that support, because there's no way that my parents would have been able to. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the money. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have any of that. I don't even know that we had health insurance when we were children. Medical care was an emergency situation. And mental health care was like,
extra.
It's not necessary. That's not even something that you were thinking about. So I think that, it would have bought me some time. I think that I would have struggled less with understanding who I am, because I would have known that, these feelings of sadness are just that. And that's a reflection on who you are. And I would have learned ways to cope through them. I mean, there were moments in college and in my young adulthood where I lost chunks and chunks of time in my life because I couldn't function. And I could have that time back and think about, what I would have been able to accomplish if I would have had that. But, in looking at my daughter and the way that I am able to care for her and, ask her questions. How are you feeling today? Let's talk about this. I think I would have just been a much more self-assured person, more rooted in myself, which is something that I've learned to do as I've grown older. I'm getting ready to be 42, and I'm just figuring that out. And so I'm like, maybe I would have had that in my 20s.
Having that confidence and that understanding of who you are much earlier.
Because, self-confidence and self-love really is the foundation for every relationship that you have. So I think about, if I would have dealt with this, but I've been in some relationships that were possibly emotionally abusive, manipulative, because I would have been very clear about, what is real and what isn't. You know what I mean? Like, all of those things from my teen year.
Absolutely.
And women need that living in the patriarchy. To be very clear on you're gaslighting me. Get all away from here with that. You're being manipulative. This is emotionally abusive. Being able to call those things out because I'm more rooted in who I am. So I know, and I'm not second guessing.
Self-aware.
And I'm not, and I'm feeling secure in who I am and assured in who I am. And strong.
So you talked about the superwoman. You talked about living in the patriarchy. What are some other unique issues that women of color face when it comes to mental health?
I think overall just that stigma, as we mentioned earlier, access to care, which I'm so grateful for you guys. I've been following you around for a while, so I'm happy to be on the couch. But having access to, because I was reading an article the other day that talked about the difference in being able to have a mental health practitioner who looks like you, who understands, the challenges that you might be facing. So that is a challenge that I think women of color face when they are seeking treatment or just someone to talk to. I think the way that we normalize abuse in our culture, we kind of understand that if it's not physical abuse, things would be a lot different if women could tap into these resources and systems that can help them identify those things. And again, change your life, save time. If we could recognize, and this is something that I practice, wherever I go, if I'm, at the checkout, and, there's a a woman of color there and she seems angry, or just being able to be like, oh, are you okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, girl, you almost off work? Just the small things like that. So even in being able to recognize one another.
Right. I see you.
Yeah, I see you.
Right.
You are seen. And
I get it.
Sorry. I'm sorry that you were going through this.
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to have those conversations, the difficult conversations too. Because so often, we can just sit and listen and be like, yeah, girl.
Yeah.
Or, we can be like, well, I mean, you just gotta do what you gotta do.
Right.
But
go ahead. No, I was gonna say, and I think part of that is we need to stop celebrating that when women
that's strong black women.
Stop celebrating you are so strong for everything you've gone through or everything in relationships.
Right.
You just stood by your partner and you are so committed and you're resilient and you made it, and it's like
a friend of mine, Brittany Daniel, actually wrote a great article over at Essence about this same thing, talking about Tiny and T.I.
I reposted that.
Yeah, she was like, why are we celebrating this? Why do we keep telling this woman? Somebody needs to be like, look, girl. He's not changing.
Right.
And so it is okay to say goodbye.
Right. And sometimes your resilience can be used against you or something.
It's so true. It is so true. So being able to have those kinds of conversations.
Right.
It's like, I see you. I'm sorry that this is happening to you.
Right.
Like, that is something that I've started as a practice.
Yeah.
Like telling women when I see them struggling, like, I'm so sorry that this is happening. And you will be amazed how many women just break down because nobody has said that to them.
Right.
Like, nobody has said them. Like, I'm so sorry that you are having to struggle with this. I think that is also a part of the conversation. Like, not only outside conversations, but conversations within our sisterhood circles. How that can change and evolve and make us stronger and maybe able to move more powerfully in our decision making.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What is your favorite resource or podcast, a book, or whatever?
So I love you guys couch sessions and the page on Instagram is great. I need a little pics. My therapist said, I'm like, that's right. Yes. I'm reposting that. What else? Black Girls at Home. I enjoy Therapy for Black Girls. I'm a podcast girl. So I listen to all of that. I really think for me, and this is not necessarily mental health guys or whatever, but reading bell hooks really helped me understand a lot of things about myself and this journey towards healing that we are all constantly on.
Right.
Like the other day I was reading, first of all, bell hooks, I got to meet her last year, and I just love her. She is the best and the most quirky and so honest, because she was talking to us. It was a group of women and a part of the Young Mothers program with Project Row House. And so she brought the young mothers in, and she talked about her own ideas about suicidal ideation. The concept and the idea of ageism and aging and how that affects your mental health. And she's like, I don't know if I want to be here until I'm 90 years old. Those kinds of honest conversations. But she also said something that was so profound that really shifted my thinking. She says she doesn't allow people to call her strong, and she doesn't call herself strong. She says, I use the word powerful.
Ooh, I like that.
She said, because when you say that you're strong, or people say that you're strong, it's in a sense of a mule.
Right.
I can load stuff on you.
That's right.
You're strong. You can take this abuse a lot of times. This ill treatment, maltreatment, right?
Yes.
But when we say that we are powerful, in being powerful, we can say that, this is a moment where I am struggling, or I feel empty, or I feel hopeless, or I need support.
Yeah.
I need help. And that is the difference between strong and powerful, and we should choose to be powerful.
I love that.
And so she does these kinds of things in all of her books. I was reading her the other day, and she was talking about our primal relationships and how they guide our love and romantic relationships as we age. and how a lot of times we confuse abuse with love, or we think that they can coexist because that's what we're taught as children. And how we bring that same thinking into our adult relationships. Like, just so many profound things from Bell Hooks. I love Audre Lorde, who is, you know, such a powerful thinker and speaker and poet and writer. You know.
Love it. Awesome.
Those are some good resources,
That's
right?
awesome.
I'm thinking like,
check while you're talking. So tell us what makes you dope.
Oh,
Yes.
no.
Yes, ma'am.
I do the same thing. When I have my podcast, I always ask my guests to introduce themselves because I'm like, you know, people need to be into the habit of writing on themselves. And now I'm sitting here like,
I don't want to.
I don't want to do that. What makes me dope? I think I call myself a ghetto anthropologist, right? Like, I'm very interested in the cultural phenomenon, particularly around Blackness. I love stories. You know, I aspire to be a modern day Zora Hurston, right? Who is a writer, but who also has this like root in anthropology herself, and who studied anthropology. And it is amazing, like her new book, as a matter of fact, are conversations that she was having when she was working for the Library of Congress, recording freed enslaved folks, like, you know, back in that time. So I love her because she is a storyteller, and if I aspire to be like anyone in my writing, it is Zora, because she was very rooted in culture and Blackness and everyday Blackness. So not like the talented 10th Blackness. Like, she wrote in dialect, like she was very rooted in that. And she was just very interested in telling stories. So I think if I was think about what makes me dope, it's my interest in people, my curiosity in the stories of people, and, you know, being able to translate and tell those stories. And a lot of times the stories that no one else is telling about us.
That's awesome.
Creating conversations and just kind of being at the center of all of those things to try to make differences in people's lives and to help people be seen. So I think that's what makes me dope.
Hella dope.
We love it. Okay, final question before we have you tell them how to find you.
Okay.
Why is therapy dope?
Oh man, because it will literally save your life and save you time. You know, it is one because I can read and write self-help and do all of these things, but it's just nothing like being able to lay things out to someone else and to have them unpack them and like, oh, let's talk about this. Oh, you said this. How about, you know, and you're just speaking, you just have things rambling on in your mind, but for someone to guide those conversations,
the process,
you know, it is just so, it's a miracle. It changes your life. So, like, you guys are doing the divine's work. Yeah, that's what makes therapy dope. It's just like, it will save your life. You know, that opportunity to pour your soul out and to have someone say, not only do I understand that, but like, here are some tools to deal with that, to heal that, you know, which is another thing that because we can, I can look at, you know, what I think when looking at self, what my issues are. But a lot of times the tools. And figuring out, okay, so like, how do we work on this? I'm stuck there. I don't know. And just, you know, having someone who's outside of your head and outside of your friend circle. Your homegirls are not your therapists. Sometimes they are.
They are.
Like, you know,
it can be therapeutic.
But it's not the same. Us having a conversation over cocktails is not the same as, you know, you being in the church. You guys have that problem? With your friends?
Yeah.
You have it? I remember, you know, Rabia. So,
we had her here last
JJ Simmons, Robbie was here. JJ Simmons, we do this event called The Gathering, which is coming up on the 15th, which is really dope. And Robbie is a licensed therapist. So when I first met her, I was like, hey girl. Looking for new patients? She was like, that sounds great, but you know what sounds even more great? Let's be friends. Yes. Like, she didn't want to get into a line. I was a friend. I don't want to always be like the therapist. I can imagine you all like have that same struggle. But yeah, your homegirls are not a therapist. Get in to see a licensed therapist. Therapy is dope. It can save you time. It can save you from making habitual, perpetual, bad decisions over and over that can really impact your life, or not only your life, but the lives of others who are around you. Like, I think therapy is dope because it is making me a better mother.
That's
awesome. And a better friend, and a better lover.
Yours is probably the most poetic definition of why therapy is dope. I love it. I'm like, yes.
Write that down.
Man. Definitely. Love that.
So tell everybody how to find you, how to stay in touch, read your writing.
Oh, so you guys can follow me on Twitter. I am at Joe Nubian, and also on Instagram, I'm at Joe Nubian, at JONUBIAN. And I'm Josie Pickens, JOSIEPICKENS on Facebook. Yeah. So I usually post all of my writing and musings and all of that on those 3 social media outlets. So follow me there.
Yay! Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me. This was fun. I feel like I was rambling and talking too much, but hopefully it translated well.
It did. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you. As always, you can follow us at Melanin and Mental Health across social media, Melanin Health on Twitter, and head over to melaninandmentalhealth.com to check out all the shows, all the shirts, all the dope therapists.
Hey,
sign up for the directory. Sign up for our upcoming webinar, which is...
Yes, the upcoming webinar is going to be led by Dr. Manuel Samaripa, which he was part of our Changing the Face of Therapy webinar that we had over the summer. His webinar is... I think it's by 2060, it is predicted that the Latinx community will make up 1/4 of the population. We're everywhere. And so he's going to be, his webinar is called Browning Your Counseling, Browning Your Practice, working with Chicanx, Latinx populations. He is awesome. He is so wonderful. So his webinar is going to be November 13th, 7 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Sign up for the webinar. If you can't tune in live, you will have a link to the recording. So head over to Melanin and Mental Health, sign up for that, so that you're able to feel maybe just a little more confident when working with the Latinx community.
Right.
Is that it? That's all we got?
That's all we got.
We got more for you next week, but
we will talk to y'all later.